The Nashville Predators lose Roman Josi. The Nashville Predators lose their tempers. The Nashville Predators lose 4-1 to the Panthers. We're going to recap that game today with our one word and talk about the surprising question Barry Trotz asked the leadership group and what we think their answers mean for this team now and next season.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to kick off this Wednesday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio and friends. I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Emma, it was another frustrating loss for the Nashville Predators, who did manage to score one single solitary goal. We're going to talk about that this episode. There were more issues than goal scoring. We're going to talk about what some of those issues that we saw were in this game against the Florida Panthers. We also want to talk about the point blank question Barry Trotz asked his leadership team and what their answers may reveal about the future of this franchise. Before we get into that, I just want to be upfront with anyone watching on YouTube. One of us covered the game professionally. One of us got to stay home tonight and watch it from her couch with her dog. So there is a discrepancy here.
Well, there's a clear winner in that scenario as well, and it sure as heck is not me, because you, Anne, got to be at home with your dog and not in the locker room with all the sad puppies that are the Nashville Predators right now. So
I know. God go with you. I was like, oh my heavens, may God go with the media. And look, not that the players aren't professional, but it's tough. You all, it is tough times. And I know that it's tough times as a fan. I know it's tough times as media. I know it is tough times in that locker room. It's tough times in Nashville. Of course, the 4-1 loss to the Florida Panthers last night certainly does not help make the times feel any less tough. So, Emma, when you reflect back on this game, this loss at home at Bridgestone Arena, what is your one word to describe that game?
I think it's two words. I tried to go with one, but I'm going to go to no fire. There was no fire until, and I know we're going to talk about this later, but it took their captain getting injured and taken out of the game for this team to show signs of life and signs of fight in them, which, on one hand, it's like, yeah, okay, you don't want that to have to happen for the team to actually show some fight. But one thing, we talked to Michael McCarron after the game, and one thing that he said that I thought was, really resonated with me was that, hey, we still have guys. One thing about this group, even if we're not winning, we're not getting the results, we're still going to stand up for each other and we're still going to defend our teammates. And he said, I think you can tell when a team is broken when they stop doing that.
Yes.
And so I thought that was a very good way of putting it. It's like, yeah, the results aren't there. They're not winning games. They're not scoring goals, but they're still playing for each other. Now, again, you don't want to have to, have it get to an extreme before they're actually showing fight and doing that, because at that point it's too late. But I think that's kind of the story of the season. It feels like they're chasing a lot of games. Andrew Brunette said that they weren't prepared for the pace of this one.
Mm-hmm.
So again, how many times have we seen this year? They give up an early goal, and they, it just takes the wind right out of their sails right away. So it's just the no fire. It was like maybe like a little flicker towards the end when, they got fired up after Roman Josi was taken out with an injury that I know we'll get to here in a bit. But yeah, it's just not what you want to see.
No. When you're talking about Andrew Burnett saying we weren't prepared for the pace of the game, that really is sort of where my one word is, and my one word is diagnostics. And so I had to get a new car. It was a whole thing. Had to get a new car. It's been about a year now. Still feels new to me, still very fun to drive. But you take it in and you have to, like, if a light pops on, like, you have to run diagnostics. And it's like, okay, here's where it's supposed to be. Here's where the system is. And I felt like this game tonight was a really good measuring stick for Nashville, Stanley Cup champions. And they have retained a lot of the players who helped them get there. But we've been struggling to sort of diagnose the team, like really say, okay, here are all the factors that go into why this team is struggling. And I think there are some that are still nebulous, even at this point. But when you play against the Florida Panthers, you can see here is the pace up here where you need to play speed wise. Here is where Nashville is playing, and it's not up there. Here is where you need to be when it comes to winning the 50-50 puck battles. Nashville wasn't up to that level. Here is where you need to be when it comes to connecting on passes or capitalizing on breakaways or odd man rushes. Nashville wasn't at that level. So this game really was, for me, a very painful but good visual of, on this night, you see where the disconnects are with Nashville because you saw the success, the connections were and brought for Florida. And so for me, I felt like, I'm like, okay, I see it. I see it. You don't necessarily see it when we beat San Jose 7-5, but when you play Florida, you see, like, okay, here's how much we're off by in these areas that really matter.
Yeah, because I mean, the Florida Panthers are a contender. And I mean, not just because, yes, they're the reigning champions, but I mean, they play like a contender. They play like a Stanley Cup contender. And you
Yes.
see, it's interesting. We talk about stats a lot and advanced stats and things like expected goals and whatnot that, whether you believe in that is really neither here nor there. I think the point is that if you look at these two teams after the first period of the Predators and the Panthers, it was, I think, Nashville and Florida each had the same number of scoring chances according to Natural Stat Trick, and they had the same number of high danger chances.
Mhm.
5 scoring chances each. They had 1 high danger chance each after the first period. Entering that game, the Predators and the Panthers ranked 3rd and 2nd, respectively, in the NHL in time spent in the offensive zone. One of these things is not like the other.
Wow.
You would not have
Yeah.
guessed
Mm-mm.
because so it's kind of like what you're talking about with diagnostics. It's like you think, like this is where they need to be, and it's like, okay, well they have the zone time, but the zone time frankly means nothing if you don't have the results to show for it. So it's just interesting because you have, like I said, the Predators were 3rd, I think 44.5% of time spent in the offensive zone. Panthers just ahead at 44.7. And first place, Carolina Hurricanes, also a contending team
Yep.
right now. So it's, kind of one of those things that it's like, all right, well, the system, we see what the system is prioritizing, which is time in the offensive zone. But if you're not getting the results like, say, the Panthers and the Hurricanes have been, then is the system really working? And I that's more of a rhetorical question because I think the answer is no, not with this roster. So, it's kind of, I guess, my long-winded way of saying there's more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to finding success in this league and with making sure that your coaching style and your system matches the roster that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is going to be a topic that we're going to be talking about. I think it's going to be a conversation that Barry Trotz is going to have with Andrew Brunette when the season is over. We always talk with our insiders before, during, and after games. And sometimes it's just therapy, y'all. It's just texting therapy. Catalina's one word is two words because she's an insider, and that's how we roll. No goals. Technically one goal, but we absolutely are picking up your vibe. If we weren't able to make the breakaway or the multiple rebounds that followed, then we don't deserve to win. And man, you just see Nashville, like you said, you're in the zone. They're doing the things, but they're not finishing. Dustin's one word, dejected. This team looks ready for the season to be over. Jaden's one word, embarrassing. It was a tough night at Bridgestone Arena last night, y'all. It was. Coming up, there are plenty of lessons to learn through all of this struggle the Predators are going through this loss against the Stanley Cup champs. We're going to talk about some of the lessons this locker room is learning and some of the issues that we're seeing. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find an amazing candidate fast? It's really easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If you have ever been in that spot where you need the right hire right now, you know the pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That is exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that is Indeed.com/lockedon. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. All right, Emma, just rough 4-1 loss to the Florida Panthers. We talk about, issues with this team and we're going to dive into them. But when we're looking at this game, I think, again, it just reiterates probably the most glaring issue from the entire season, you all, and that is just no offensive production. Like you said, chances, but this team cannot find the back of the net. And it's something that, they have been wrestling with. It's something that we have been asking questions about. It's something Andrew Brunette has made adjustments to his system for. Like, they are trying to solve this Rubik's Cube of madness, but it's tough. And not only is the issue of not being able to score a challenge when it comes to winning games, it wears on these players. Luke Shen talked with media post-game about just how taxing it is to be struggling to find offense. This is what Shen had to say.
It's very taxing. Obviously, you need to score to win in this league, and we get some big saves a lot of time, but you feel for both goalies. But obviously, Juice a lot here. It's he doesn't get much run support. So when you're trying to win a game all the time and score, you don't score. It's obviously extremely challenging, and every play means that much more. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know too many games this year where it's just found the way in the back of the net. We can kind of feel good about ourselves, protect the lead. Every game is just it's a grind for sure.
One of our insiders said this, Lee said this, and I was like, this is such a really good way to explain this experience. Lee said, it honestly feels like we're putting 150% effort in to try to get like 2 goals and then turn around and the other team is playing putt-putt. And that's not a shot at the goaltender. It just looks easier for other teams to score goals than it does for Nashville. And I think it really is. I know it is. The players are saying, look, mentally, this is tough. Like, Shen even said this is one of the most difficult things he's been through in his career, is watching this happen. But for me, Emma, the thing that I wish that people would would watch this and take away, and I think that maybe in some cases it's misrepresented. I don't think that this is a team that's given up. I don't think this team isn't scoring goals at this point in the season because they're like, oh, well, out of the playoffs, not even trying. I don't think that's it at all. And I think people feel like this team's just like, we just quit. We're just not even going to try hard anymore. And I'm telling you, my experience, my conversations, that's not what's happening.
Yeah, definitely not. And first of all, kudos to you. I think we need to work this into our rotation. The Rubik's Cube of Madness.
The Rubik's.
Excellent.
Oh my gosh. Write it down for the swag store. Rubik's Cube of Madness.
This is like a Rubik's Cube of Madness because, like you said, it's the opposite of just throwing in the towel and being like, well, what are you going to do? I mean, it's almost like you don't want to say they're trying too hard, but it's like the frustration from, they're not apathetic about this. It's not in their nature.
Yes,
it's not in their nature to be apathetic about this. They are angry and they are frustrated. And that now, of course, creates this vicious cycle because, the more angry and the more frustrated you are, you still, you start gripping the stick tighter and whatever, other hockey cliches, but it doesn't help your cause. So I'm not saying that in any way to excuse the lack of results because frankly, nothing excuses the lack of results with the roster. But I am just saying it more to explain, like you said, there's no apathy in this room. It's a lot of frustration. And I think that's just being, competitive by nature. It's being human. I think that, you're seeing this season wear on these guys a lot, but not in terms of causing them to just, give up. It's more in the sense of, it's making them angry and frustrated. And, Luke Shen, we talked to him. Obviously, you played the clip from our conversation with him after the game. And I've seen some people already, saying like, well, what is Luke Shen? He has no business talking about the lack of scoring on this team. He is part of the problem, blah, blah, blah. Okay. If your team has Steven Stamkos, Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi, Jonathan Marchessault on it, you shouldn't need Luke Shen to be a source of offense for you.
Thank you.
Like, Luke Shen is not the reason that there's no offense on this team.
No, he is not.
But it's still like it affects the rest of the team. And that wasn't him taking a shot at his teammates. If anything, I think the context here is really important because he says, he's talking about essentially, look, it's not for lack of effort. We're getting the chances. They're there. And Luke Shen himself took a couple chances. Like he had a couple slap shots, especially over the last few games where he's like trying to put the puck on the net. But they're just, they're getting the chances, but they're not capitalizing on them. And like you said before, these are basic things like rebounds and crashing the net, things that are like just fundamentals that other teams, they seem to make it look easy. And Nashville is struggling with even the fundamentals of this game. And I'm not in their heads. We talk to these guys as much as we can to, try to get a better understanding. But it's almost as if, they're thinking, again, this is oversimplifying it a lot, but it's like they're thinking too much.
Right.
Instead of just, anyone who's saying, they don't care, they've given up. No, it's quite literally the opposite of that.
Yeah.
They're trying too hard and it's still creating a problem that would, the lack of results.
Right. And I think it's important for people to know that because I think the easy thing to assume is that since this team at this point in the season still is struggling to score, it's just, they've just given up. They're not trying. And I'm telling you, and not because, look, let's be very clear. Emma and I don't get paid to tell you nice things about the Nashville Predators. We get paid to talk about the Nashville Predators. We can say whatever we want to say. we're not telling you this to paint a rosy picture of something. We're telling you in our conversations, you need to know that this is a team that is struggling and desperately wants to figure it out. There is not apathy. That's the word. Defense was a struggle again last night. Of course, this is a defense dealing with injuries. The other thing, the defense was run ragged. Like they ran through the defense. It was like a hot knife through butter at times. It was like, hey, UC Saros, here are 2 Florida Panthers players, and your other guys are over there. It was rough. And this was, I think, one of the areas where the speed of Florida really was showcased compared to where Nashville was able to pace themselves to defend. It was just rough.
Yeah. Oh, you mean Justin Barron caught too low in the zone? You're kidding.
I
That's
know.
never happened. No, I mean, it happens a lot with, these guys, they get caught too far into the zone and then there's a quick turnover. That was
Mhm.
another issue, was turnovers.
Yes.
Oh,
Bless.
Nick Blankenberg. We know I love Nick Blankenberg.
Bless.
He had a rough one in the
He
third
did.
period.
Oh,
And it wasn't just him. I don't mean to single him out like he was the only one having that problem, but his, did lead directly to a goal. I just, oh man, it's tough because it's like they commit the turnover, and obviously that's problem number one. You don't want to commit the turnover in the first place, but things happen. It's like if they do commit the turnover, and this is not just in this game, this has just been constant all season. They do the thing, whether it's committing the turnover, whether it's, whatever the mistake is, they,
mhm.
they turn the puck over or they commit the dumb penalty or whatever it is, and then they can't recover from it. And they're
Yes.
already behind the ball because they can't respond when things go poorly. And that fundamentally is a big problem with this team, offensively and defensively. It's just they can't, as the moment things go wrong, it's just the wheels fall off.
It's almost like they're in fight or flight or
Yeah.
freeze. Like they almost go amygdala on us instead of frontal lobe or muscle memory. Yeah, you sort of see that. And I think it's because they haven't been able to have the experience and gain the confidence to go, hey, we can make this mistake and we can with cooler heads, recover from it, and we can still win this game. I think that they are so they're struggling so much it feels like they can't overcome mistakes, which then therefore they struggle to overcome the mistakes. One of the big things that happened in this game, Nashville Predators captain Roman Josi left the game. Coming up, we are going to give you the latest update that we have on his situation. We are also going to share with you the one question Barry Trotz asked each of the members of the leadership team in that locker room. And we're going to tell you what their answer tells us about this franchise. You hear us talk a lot on the podcast about our Locked On Predators insider community, and we want to invite you to join us there on Subtext. Our insiders, of course, share their one word to describe the game. They get to ask us questions and share their thoughts on the team, on a topic that we're talking about, or on breaking news as well. It's a chance to chat with Emma and I via text beyond the podcast. So if you are interested in learning more about that insider program via Subtext, you can get all the details in the link in our bio or in the description of this episode. All right, Emma, you were there to receive the official word. You texted me as I sat on my couch with my dog, and I really do appreciate that. But will you share with our listeners what was the official word post-game that we were given about Roman Josi's status, what is going on with him?
Well, it's going to be a disappointing update, unfortunately, because the update was essentially that there is no update. We were told by Team PR after the game that Roman Josi was still being evaluated for an upper body injury. No further update at this time. Not too surprising. Obviously, he's got a history of head injuries. They could be operating out of an abundance of caution because, the injury took place when it was late in the second period. He was trying to collect a puck along the board, sort of in the corner. And Sam Bennett came in and boarded him from behind. And what I will say is that, and again, this is pure speculation on my part, so reporting nothing here, but just having watched the play, watching the hit, his upper body did go into the glass pretty hard, but it did not appear that his head had taken the brunt of the blow. Now, it's still was a big hit. Still excuse me, still was rough. He was Bennett was whistled for boarding afterwards. But whistled for boarding, Preds got a power play. Roman Josi stayed out there for the power play. He played on the power play, obviously. They did not capitalize on the power play. Big surprise there. They go to intermission. They come back. Roman Josi is not on the bench. He did not come back, did not play at all in the third period. Again, if I were to guess, I would say it is the team operating out of an abundance of caution, given his history. We don't know how serious or not serious this injury is, but we do know exactly where the Predators are right now. This is not a playoff team. It is, I mean, really, truly nothing is worth risking anyone's health, but especially in a situation where this team is not playing meaningful games right now. So it is not worth jeopardizing the health of your captain and one of your most important pieces. Don't expect really a concrete update on Roman Josi until probably Thursday ahead of the game against the Winnipeg Jets.
One thing that we do know that Roman Josi did was have a conversation with Barry Trotz. Barry Trotz shared some insight, and he basically said, I sat down with the leaders in the locker room and I asked them, it sounded like the way he worded it sounded like he did this individually and just said, like, look, like, where are you at? Do you believe it can happen here? Are you in? And basically the message was, if you don't feel like it's going to happen for you here, if you don't see yourself being successful here, tell me and we'll move on. Those conversations probably happen often. I don't know that you have a lot of general managers that say that they have those conversations with their leadership team. But he did say that the players, the leadership team said, we want to be here. Like, we believe that this team can work. We believe in this group. We are in. And that's something that I think Predators fans need to hear this season, because, again, we talk about, the perception may be there is apathy in the locker room. The perception may be that there is tension in the locker room among the leaders. We've heard, Bruno's lost the room. We've heard, Stamkos wishes he was back in Tampa Bay and all this stuff. I think that there is something to be said for the fact that while this team is struggling to get through the slog of this season, while they are struggling to find success, they still believe in this group. And I think that's important for Predators fans to hear.
Well, I think too, it goes back to what we've been saying all along, which is that no one is going to look at this roster and say, oh, that's not a group that can win. That roster can't win. And that's what these guys are saying too. It's like, we know we have the ingredients, we have the pieces here. So there's still belief in the group, as well there should be, because there's enough of a body of work from all of these guys in the past that, again, it's not like they just all of a sudden Steven Stamkos is a bad hockey player. Like, no, that's not what's happening. And so I think that it speaks to that too. It speaks to like the group. Like, it's going to be hard to argue that the group, is bad and that they don't have the pieces to be successful. Now, are they a Stanley Cup contender right away? No. And I said that at the beginning of the season before any of this happens. Like, maybe not going for a cup this year, but they're sure a playoff team. and
Mhm.
no one looks at that roster and says, "Oh, they can't make
No.
playoffs with that
No.
roster." Like, yeah, they can. And so again, I think it goes back to that. I think it goes back to what Mike McCarron was saying after the game about how, like, you can tell a team is broken if they stop standing up for
Mhm.
each other, if they stop, playing for each other. We're not seeing that. You and I are in the room, we're in the open locker room after practices and morning skates. So for just context for anyone who doesn't know, after games, we're given a select, handful of players that we get to speak to after games. But after practices and skates, we usually get an open room so we
Mhm.
can go up to anyone, talk to anyone who's in the locker room. So it's during those times when you get to see sort of the vibe in the room and
Mhm.
you see how guys interact with each other. And that's not something you can fake. Like, if you
Yeah.
could tell, we'd be able to tell if this group was broken, if they had lost faith in each other, if they, had just given up, and if the overall mood or vibe was just bad. And it's not. Like, it's
Mhm.
really not. And now I'm sure there are gonna be people who say, "Well, they should be upset. They should, the vibe should be bad." No. I mean, that points to a bigger problem. So I think that, this all goes to show that, like, nothing has changed about the group that was assembled here.
Yes. Mhm.
And there is no reason to believe that all of a sudden, just because the results aren't there, that this is a bad team, it's a bad group of players. It's not. Now, again, as we've said many times, we don't know exactly what it is, but I mean,
And there
it's
are components still missing.
yes,
But to throw
for
the
sure.
baby out with the bathwater is ridiculous with this
Yeah,
roster. Ridiculous.
yeah,
Yeah. I think you go back to, and it's hard in sports because sports is results oriented. And that's something we hear the players say all the time. This is a results oriented business. And so it is very hard to feel good about your game when you look at the results that this team has. But you also have to remember that you measure a team not just by what have they done, what is their record, but you also have to evaluate a team based on who they are. And I talked to Ryan O'Reilly this morning. Let me tell you, Ryan O'Reilly is a competitor who needs a sports psychologist, but he is such a competitor. He wants to figure this out. And again, let me emphasize for anybody who's going to go, "Oh, you're just saying nice things." Look, we do not have to say nice things. I understand why people view it one way, but just here is some information. Do with it what you will. Yes, it's their record that speaks to their season, but who they are in the locker room is not broken. They're tired,
yeah.
they're taxed, they're struggling, but who they are as a team in the locker room, that part isn't broken.
No. And I think that, again, we're not here saying that that excuses the lack of
No,
results, because it doesn't.
doesn't.
And we understand that fans are upset. Believe me, we're frustrated, we're upset. Again, still be upset about the results.
Sure,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
No one
Absolutely.
is saying that you shouldn't be. And quite frankly, no one is more upset than the players
Locker room.
themselves. And that is the problem. That is, if they had given up, they wouldn't care. They'd be like, "All right, how many games left until I get to go
Yeah.
play golf?" Like, that's not what's happening here at
Mm-mm.
all. And
No.
Barry Trotz he was very deliberate about that when he built this team, when he constructed this roster, in that he wants to bring in pieces to ensure that something like that would not happen. And that
Yeah.
also speaks to why he would go to his leadership group and say, "Hey," and it's not in a threatening, like, ultimatum way, like, "If you
No.
don't wanna be here, then I'm trading you." No, it's because he wants from the top down in that locker room, he wants the right, mentality. He
Mhm.
wants belief in the room, because if the guys at the top don't believe in each other, then the guys further down the bottom aren't going to. So that's where this is all coming from. And I think, quite frankly, I'm not surprised that these particular guys said, no, you know what?
I'm not
I'm
either.
I'm not
I think
either,
a lot of people might be surprised. I wasn't surprised that they
No.
said, "No, we believe in this. We
Yeah.
think we can get this right."
This is sort of a case of like, what happened with Ryan McDonough over the summer.
Mhm,
This
mhm.
is a situation where a Ryan McDonough, for example, may have said, "Hey, I'm not like I just don't feel like I'm, playing my best. I don't think that we're, this group has what it takes," whatever it is, whatever that conversation was. But this is one of those kinds of situations where Barry Trotz is giving his players a chance to do what Ryan McDonough did and
Mhm.
say, hey, if there's a way that you can trade me to somewhere that's going to be, a better fit
Right.
for me,
That's gonna
then
happen for you.
then I would love for you to explore that. And he did. He honored that request. And I think that that's something that's very important to Barry. Above all, he wants Nashville to be a place that players want to come to play. And people, like guys, want to play under a GM like that. Again, it doesn't surprise me with this current group that they have, and from the conversations we've had with them, that it totally tracks for me that they still have the belief in the group that they have.
Yeah. There are definitely adjustments that need to be made. Definitely results need to improve, but this is a group that's in it. And it may not look like it, and it sure doesn't feel like it, you all. I get why it doesn't feel like it after a 4-1 loss to Florida, but I'm telling you, they're in it. Now, they're going to be in it again tomorrow against the Winnipeg Jets. Andrew Burnett referred to this stretch of 4 games as murderer's row. That doesn't paint a visual picture for it. Because they're just tough teams. These are tough, tough teams to compete against. Nashville's going up against Winnipeg tomorrow. On tomorrow's show, we are going to preview that game. We're going to talk about some things that Nashville has to turn around and do differently. We're also going to share where they may be able to capitalize on some of the soft spots in the armor of the Winnipeg Jets. The President's Trophy chasing Winnipeg Jets. Y'all, it's been a whole season. Before we sign off, though, today, Emma, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio and at Penalty Box Radio Live as well. Friends, that is going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day on this Wednesday. We hope you have a great day. We're going to be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.